Hi, I'm Chelsea of Friday Pattern Company, and in this video I wanted to go over what I believe are the most essential and kind of the bare minimum of what you need to get started with garment sewing. I'm gonna give you prices wherever I can and put links below. They are for the US, but they're all pretty basic tools, so just if you aren't in the US, just Google around or go to your local shop to check it out. Okay, so now we're gonna go over the things that I feel like you need to buy. And I'm trying to be really cost sensitive because I think it's important to have the tools that you need, but also not spend a ton of money on, you know, something that you don't know if you love yet. So forever, the iron that I used was a $10 iron that I got at Target. It's a Black & Decker iron and it works great. I found it on their website. It's $12.99 now. There are really expensive irons out there. I do not think you need them, and I'm sorry if you have a different opinion than me, please don't come at me. You'll also need a surface to iron on, an ironing board, which I think a lot of households have them, but if you don't, you can actually get this heat resistant fabric that I got this at Joann's. It's $14.99 a yard, and I actually have a half yard chunk that you will see in a lot of my sew alongs because you can just stick it out on any surface and iron on it. Next up is cutting tools, and cutting tools are very important. So dressmaking shears, like scissors that are meant for fabric, are different than like the scissors that you get at, you know, that are maybe like kitchen scissors or craft scissors. So get yourself a pair of dressmaking shears, and unlike with the iron, I do think you want to spend a little bit of money on this, but not too much. So I really like Kai scissors. It's a Japanese brand and they are $20 for their 8-inch dressmaking shear. And these are great. They're lightweight, they don't have a ton of strain on your hand, and they're super sharp. I'm not positive if you can get these sharpened, but the other pair that I have and that I've had forever are my Gingers. They are the classic 8-inch dressmaking shears, and these are, I believe, $40. They're a little bit heavier, so there is kind of more strain on your hand in that way, but they are just solid. They'll last you forever. You can get them sharpened. They're great. But you know, you could probably start with the Kais and maybe get Gingers if you want something a little heavier. Eventually, you are going to want to get if you get really into garment making, you'll probably want to get a self-healing mat and a rotary cutter. It makes cutting a lot easier. It's a lot faster. You can be more precise, especially with like stretchy fabrics or slippery fabrics that want to move around. So you just, with a mat and a rotary cutter, you put the mat down, you can lay your fabric out on top, weigh it down, and then you use the rotary cutter like a pizza slicer to cut out your pieces. And so I found below, I'm linking a $12 rotary cutter. The blades do have to be replaced on that, and then, so that's added expense. And then the mat, which you'll want at least a 24 by 36 size, because if it's smaller than that, those are more for like quilters cutting out small squares. If it's smaller than 24 by 36, you're gonna have a hard time, like you'll have to move your pattern pieces around a lot. So yeah, that's my recommendation. Something I want to add to the cutting tools thing is that I like to be very cognizant of hand strain because I want to use my hands. I want to sew into old age. So anytime I notice that I'm using a tool that's straining my hand, I try to stop or figure out how I can, if I'm maybe at like a weird angle, or if I need to sharpen the blades or replace the tool or whatever, because when you're straining your hand, you're potentially doing damage that you're gonna feel later and you might regret it. So just keep that in mind. Also, if you are left-handed, get left-handed tools. I'm left-handed. I spent a lot of years just using right-handed stuff because it was easier. Like at the fabric store, it was like so easy when I'm cutting fabric to like, the scissors that are sitting there, I'm like, okay, I'll just use these, and they're right-handed. I think as lefties, we're trained to be like a little bit ambidextrous because we use a lot of tools that aren't meant for the hand that we are using, and I think that's a mistake because I have really strained my hands using right-handed tools. So this might be easy. You might be like, duh, Chelsea, but if you're a lefty, get left-handed tools. They're out there, and a lot of times you just have to like order it or something. Next up is pinning. So you'll see me in my sew-alongs, you'll see me using pins, and you'll also see me using wonder clips. And pins are what you need to get started. You can get them for pretty cheap. I recommend getting glass head pins because they are you can iron on them and they won't melt onto your iron, which I learned the hard way. So glass head pins, I think I found a set for $7. I think you might be able to get a better deal if you go into your local shop. The other thing is these Wonder Clips are really amazing. I love them. If you get into garment sewing, you should get them. This pack of 50 is $15.99, which is kind of expensive, but I really love these. They're just a lot easier for holding things in place, and yeah, they're really strong. There's less like finagling with getting pins in. I think they're really great. And then this is also not like a total necessity, but I do think that having a magnetic pin cushion is very helpful, and I found this one for $6. So you can kind of like, if you need to like run this over your floor to see if you've dropped any pins, it's really helpful. And it's nice because you can kind of throw a pin. You shouldn't be throwing pins from across the room, but if you're like tossing it a couple feet over, it'll like sometimes grab it. So it's more convenient, but not completely necessary. Next up is measuring tools, and there's 3 that I think you should get: a seam gauge, a ruler, and a measuring tape. So this seam gauge is, I found it online for $2, and this is great for, because you can move it up and down to set, like if you're pressing a hem under an inch, you can move it to an inch and then use it as you're like pressing to measure consistent length. It's really helpful. They're affordable. Why not? The ruler that I like is this ruler that is 2 inches by 18 inches, and it is see-through, so I can kind of see if things are lined up underneath. I can measure different distances, and yeah, I think it's a really great tool, and I found it online for $4. And then lastly, a measuring tape, which is you'll use to measure your body and things that need to curve. It's flexible, unlike like a measuring tape that you would use for like a construction, and that will run you about like 70 cents online, and you could also get that at your local fabric store for like less than $1 probably. Last up on things that you need to buy to get started with garment sewing, I wanted to go over sewing machines and sergers. So a little background on sewing machines. The way that they're sold, at least in the US, and I think this is true also in other countries, but the way that they're sold in the US is that they are sold through dealerships. So there'll be like a licensed dealership for each brand, and some have like multiple brands, and that is like the way that they're sold. And then there's mass market machines that like, so Singer will have like a couple mass market machine styles that are generally cheaper, and they can be sold through like mass market channels like Walmart or Jeff Bezos's website or whatever. So I have 3 sewing machines and 2 sergers that I've kind of collected over the years that I have currently. And my sewing machines are kind of like, I would say really affordable, middle, and expensive. Not as expensive as it could be, because they can get really expensive. So I have a Janome Memory Craft 6600 is my nicest sewing machine, and it was purchased used from a dealership. Buying used from a dealership is a great way to get a higher quality machine at a lower price, because a lot of times dealerships will also do sewing machine servicing. So you're able to, so when they get like a used machine from someone, it'll get serviced before it's sold as a used machine. So you know it's been recently serviced, and you have a little bit of a background on like how like the quality of the machine and how much it's in like good working order, because sewing machines last a really long time. So used good quality machines are like where it's at. That's my recommendation if you can get your hands on that. You can also look around on like Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or wherever, and then potentially like get a more affordable one and then take it to get serviced at a sewing machine shop, just to make sure it's like oiled and everything's working great. If you take care of a sewing machine, a good quality sewing machine, it'll last decades. My middle of the road sewing machine that I have is a Husqvarna Scandinavia that I also got used from a dealership for like $400, but it was years ago. It's a really good machine. It's kind of middle of the road. Like, it's got some extra bells and whistles. It's not super fancy. I guess the difference between this one and my Memory Craft, or my Janome Memory Craft, is that the Memory Craft is faster and stronger. So like going through thicker fabrics, things like that, it can take a lot more. It's semi-industrial, and it has some like metal parts, so it's heavier and a little bit more substantial, so I can like, and you know, it's fast and strong. So that's kind of why I got it. And then my really affordable machine I have is a Singer heavy duty something. I'll link it below. I got it on like Amazon and I think it was 150 bucks when I got it. I think it's a little bit more now. It should be somewhere between like $150 and $200, and it's a perfectly decent machine. It's a little bit trickier to work with. Like, it's more likely to come unthreaded. Like, you have to like pull the thread far out on this one or hold it when you start to sew. Otherwise it like rips the thread out, which is really annoying and like is one of those pain points that can really turn you off sewing. And even though it seems small, it's like these little naggy things that make it seem like sewing is like difficult and tedious and not fun. So if you want to get into garment sewing, I suggest you try to find like one of those middle of the road type machines that is kind of easier to sew with because it functions really smoothly. Yeah, just to get the feel for it. I have two sergers. So one of them I bought probably like 8 or 9 years ago. It's a Baby Lock Evolution Extraordinaire. When I bought it, it was more expensive than the car that I owned. It was $2,000 and I financed it from a dealership. It is like a really cool serger that does this kind of air threading thing where it like shoots the thread out, and that was a new technology. So I looked around for like comparable sergers, and I found ones that look like they're similar, around $1,000. Again, I think you might have to get it from a dealership, but maybe they've become more affordable now because it's more of a common technology. And then I have a super affordable mass market serger that I got also off of Amazon, and it was $200, and I'll link that below. And I think the biggest thing with sergers is that they're difficult to thread. They're really frustrating to thread, but this one, because it's a mass market one, because a lot of people have it, there's a lot of videos on like YouTube or whatever about getting it threaded. It's not actually that hard. So something to consider. And you don't need a serger starting out with sewing. If you do get into sewing, I would say as soon as you can afford to get one, I would get one, and you could probably just go for the cheap one just because it will make seam finishes so much easier and so much faster and so much cleaner, and it totally like revolutionizes your home sewing. I think for me it makes such a big difference because it's just like doing the zigzag stitch or like, you know, French seams or bias bound, they all take a long time, and if you're sewing a lot, I think it's worth it. So anyway, I hope this video was helpful or, you know, got you excited about maybe taking the first steps to start sewing. I like to put like little notes and graphics like hidden inside of my patterns, and one of the ones that I made is these tips for what to do if you get frustrated while sewing, and I'll put that up right here so that you can see it and pause. And I think that they're kind of funny tips. It's meant to be kind of cute, but I think I also stand by all of these. So anyway, I hope that, yeah, this was fun for you, and happy sewing.